So, what is big picture thinking? Donna gave us a great example yesterday because she said, the problem is the follow through, the organization. It gives me all of this stress, it gives me this daily burn on my energy. And then at some point, I said to her, so what's your highest priority? What is the thing you really want? She said, health. So to me, where I was going in that piece of it, and I didn't finish it because something else happened, I can't remember what. But when what I was going for in that was, so the big picture of who you are, your identity is health oriented. That's your main thing that you do. And yet the way you think is always costing you your health. So you're undermining yourself, your own biggest goal, your own big picture with this addiction to anxiety or with this addiction to this version of yourself. So the way I was thinking is like, oh, the big picture is her goal is this overall. But inside of her problem, she doesn't think about that big picture. She thinks about this more tunnel thing about like my family, my childhood, which is normal. That's of course how you would think about it. But so what we're trying to always help the client achieve and what we're thinking in our, side of things is what's really going on here? Like what's really the issue? Because the issue is not really, oh, I suffered when I was young, because that was 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So what's the issue now? There's some big picture issue now. Obviously, the picture here is the knot that we're undoing. So when we're trying to talk about the big picture, the issue, and I already talked about this for a while, so I won't go over it too many more times, but the issue is we get super wrapped up in people's symptoms, right? People's symptoms take over. And so we listen to the story about, oh, the headache, and I'm afraid of flying, and I'm overeating, and I have depression, and I'm sad, or whatever. But what we're really trying to go for with the question cycle is dig into why has that problem become problematic for you? So we're avoiding listening to this part. I'm ignoring that in some part of my head. And what I'm really interested in is formulating some big picture idea of what's going on here. As you're doing that, I want you to not separate problems into categories, sizes, intensities. Work inside of your scope if you're uncomfortable, if you're not qualified, obviously you say no. But you also don't prejudge people's problems. Why? Because their problem is their symptom. So if you think, oh, this person has a really serious problem, which is their 40 years of anxiety, versus this teenager over here has only been stuttering for 3 years, and you think, oh, this one is worse than this one, then you have already made a judgment based on symptoms. But that's not the problem. So we're always, from the hypnotic perspective, taking the big picture, which means don't listen to that and don't separate the problems into categories. As I said already, that doesn't mean you don't take an intake. That doesn't mean you don't check people's medical history. You don't work with people who are at danger, who have like psychoactive conditions. So I'm not saying don't discriminate. You do have to do that, but you don't have to judge anything. What are we going to do to create a big picture image of someone? How are we going to like take that big picture viewpoint? Well, the way into it is to just ask, how do problems become problems? And the picture is a winding road because it's a really winding road. And the thing is, a reason a person has a problem is not logical. It's not linear either. You can have one problem because of 5 detours that happened that took you in 5 circles, and you don't know that that's why it happened. And now those have become one knot over another knot over another knot, and it's all balled up into a problem that you feel stuck in because you're not aware of all the loops and detours that your mind has taken. What does the subconscious know how to do best? Go ahead and unmute yourself and tell me based on the picture. I think it was Halloween when I made this last. What is the picture trying to show you about what the subconscious mind does? The question is, what does the subconscious mind know how to do best? Thanks for helping, Diana.
Hold on to information.
What is the picture though?
Just lots of pumpkins, so lots of thoughts just randomly everywhere.
Yeah, and they're
They're
all
the
the same,
same.
they're all repeats.
Yeah, to go over and over and over the same thing.
It knows how to
Hold on.
replicate. Yeah,
Yeah, like
that's right. It knows how to replicate. It knows how to duplicate what happened yesterday. And why is it duplicating what happened yesterday?
to keep it safe, to
Yeah,
feel like it knows the outcome. It's like
yeah.
the amygdala, the brain.
And what's behind that is just that it wants to be alive. So its main motivation is aliveness or survival, which comes from that thing I said before about the subconscious is super, super old, right? So it's always been worried about us being alive. And then what it thinks to itself in its 7 or 8 year old simplistic way, just like a 7 year old does, is if I do what I did yesterday, everything will be all right because I was alive. And that's all I care about. It doesn't care about the quality of your life. It doesn't care about you improving as a human being. It just cares about replicating. So the reason that's important is because I'm asking you, well, how do problems become problems? Well, problems become problems because the same rationale gets repeated day after day and becomes part of your identity. Then your mind attaches to it a payoff, which is, well, it could be anything. The payoff for different problems is different. So for one person, it could be like, oh, the payoff for becoming a smoker is every hour I get 5 minutes off and I'm super bored of my work. So now I got 50 minutes off during the day. And that's the payoff that comes out of all this backwards rationalizing that created the problem. Or the payoff is, well, in the end, I know what my problem is, but if I change, then I have to work harder or do more things. And I'm too lazy or I don't want to. So the payoff at the level of the subconscious is, and therefore I'm going to stay the same. And that's how problems become problems because the unconscious payoff is more important than the other thing that they're asking for. That's it. That's what it really comes down to. Is the subconscious rationalizes its repetitiveness with an unconscious payoff, which then the mind gets, as Donna said, super glued to. And then it says, fuck you're quitting. Fuck you're quitting smoking because I'm going to hold on to my unconscious payoff. And so this is the whole trick of getting to root cause or getting past symptoms is, well, what is really important to a person? At the end of the day, what's more important to you? Your health and stopping your anxious thoughts or repeating yesterday because that's more comfortable to you, as you already said it was not really. And then I just present those as a double bind. So which is it? And I ask people all the time, well, what's more important to you? So as you see, what I'm trying to build here is this big picture thinking, which is like, well, so based on everything you've said, you have an unconscious payoff over here, you have a series of rationalizations over here, but what you really told me you want is this. So now that we've laid it out and taken a macro vision of it, which is it? And by the way, if they say to me, you know what it is actually now that I see all that is I want to go smoke 500 cigarettes this afternoon, I say, great, knock yourself out. How do you feel about that? And if they say that's it, then that's it. We're done. So I'm not saying that the answer is always going to be the thing they started with asking. It's going to be once the big picture is there, what do they want? Some people want to stick with whatever it is. I told you yesterday the story of the woman who said, you know, now that I see this whole thing and how to manage it, I'm going to stick with this guy, even though he's kind of abusive. So, okay, great. If that's what you want and you can manage it and you are happy with your choice, who am I to tell you any different? This is just an overview of the big picture the way I see it in my head. I am glad you can see the picture now because you'd really be wondering, Dana, what the hell I'm talking about. But like, it could be a million things. This is just one of them. But it's a maze. I'm not supposed to figure out the maze. I don't have it in me to do that. So I don't have to understand this. I just have to know this is what it is and get into it some way. That's the big picture thinking. This is another image of it. Is like I don't know. I don't know which road we're on. I don't know which street, but it's a lot of things that come together that create the problem. And I'm going to tease out one at a time until we can get some clarity on the big picture. Why is it so important to do this for each person in the moment? Because everybody is different. One person smoking for one reason, another person is smoking for another reason. One person has anxiety for one reason, another person has it for a totally other reason. And because of that, everybody's going to come to their own conclusion about their problem. And you cannot script that. And you cannot predict it. And you cannot assume anything about what's going to help them. Because what's going to help them undo that pattern that got made in some random way is unknown to you. If you think you know what it is, you're blocking your clients. That's what I said right here. You try, you're going to block them automatically. And I think it was Donna who asked me on day one, like, okay, I'm really good at helping my clients get coping mechanisms, but then they don't change their behavior. This is part of why.
Sometimes they do, by the way.
Yeah, of course they do. But this is part of why, because when we go into that fix it mentality, when we're thinking like, oh, I know, let me help you with it, we're automatically saying something is more important about how I feel about it than what your subconscious wants to say about it. And then we're triggering that psychotic insight and interrupting the client's own process. So what I really want you to do is detach from everything. And this is really the challenge. Detach from what you're expecting your clients to say, hear, the outcomes you want for them, the solving of the problem, the size of the problem, the category, caring. Everyone's going to ask me about that. How do you not care about people? Prearranged techniques, scripts, conclusions about why they have the problems they have, how the breakthrough should look. Just none of that comes into the session at all. So when I told you this is the no pressure, no prep method, I'm totally legit serious. I really do think the easiest way to come to the sessions is rested, hydrated, having been to the gym or whatever it is that you do, not obsessed with your own problems. That's the preparation, not all this other stuff. And when the client can no longer perceive the problem in the same way that they came with, that's when the problem dissolves. That's when the problem has a different feel to them. So my only goal is to understand the perception they have and then to find the knots in that. Yeah.
Can you repeat what you just said in just the previous slide, because that felt very important to me.
Sure. I agree with you. This is so important. And this is so much the challenge of my method is the only thing that I do religiously to prepare for my sessions. And I mean, obviously I'm not being an idiot about it. Like I'm educated about safety. I'm educated about who my clients are. I have an intake method. I, have studied a lot. I'm confident in who I am. Those are all background, right? But to actually come to the session or to the client or to your family in a way that they can receive your gift of reading the subconscious, you have to detach from all of these things. You have to detach from what you're expecting, from solving the problem, from the size of the problem, from categorizing it, from bringing your techniques. Like Philip, you were very tempted yesterday. You were like, oh, I see this all. And I could see your psychologist mind or your hypnotic mind was like, oh, I see so many things. And you were so excited about it. It's beautiful, right? You want to share that. But that temptation, that desire is ego. Like it's really hard to admit it because here we are, we put all this effort and time and money into our education. Like, okay, it's hard to say, like, that's not what's going to come out today. But the fact is, as soon as your ego becomes important, the client becomes less important. And they feel that. That's just the bottom line is no matter how right you are, no matter how dead on you are, it does not matter if there's even 1% of psychotic insight interrupting what you're saying. which is, by the way, why school is so hard for the majority of kids. It's not that the teachers are bad or that the lesson plan is bad. It's that the psychotic insight in the child is awake. They're like, oh, school, math, and so their mind is just saying, fuck it. It's not that they can't do it. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of topics wrapped into that, so I don't want to go into that. But bottom line is, anytime that we do this thing of let me tell you, or let me help you, or let me give you instructions, or let me evaluate you, or I know why this is hurting so much, anything like that is totally not the job that we're doing right now. And I keep telling you, it's not that I'm saying that job's not important. There's other people who do those jobs, but that's not what we're learning right now. That's not the point of this. So the only thing that matters to me is allowing the client to perceive the problem in a different way. Because once they have that, even just a little pry into the difference, the problem itself moves around. And that's where there's malleability. So it's like the problem comes in as like a little pair of underwear, right? And I'm like, stretch, 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 stretch until you get a big stretch out. I don't know why I have that underwear image in my head. It's really weird, but I've had it for a while. But it's like, that's the idea, is this feeling of various dimensions. And that's the big picture, right? I'm telling the person, okay, well, you're hyper fixated on your problem. That's why you can't function, because you're stuck in this little spot. Okay, but if we stretch it and stretch it and stretch it and stretch it, and your subconscious starts to have this perspective on it, then it looks different. Did that help?
Yeah, it was the very last part that I was,
Sorry.
when the client can no longer perceive their problem in the same way and has a choice in their thinking and problem. I've heard and known that for
Yeah,
a long time, but somehow or another, something
clicked for you.
just clicked, yeah, just
By
clicked.
the way, like I'm glad you picked up on that. That's also why there's
Mhm.
no need to ever review a session, because there's no way to retrace that stretching experience. It's not linear and it's not logical. Like, think back on the 2 sessions yesterday. Did they have any like rhyme or reason? Did they follow one thread? No, they kind of like circulate around. And some people are more linear, so you might get that too. But the bottom line is, all we did was allow different ways of perceiving the problem until it shifted how the client felt about it. And by the way, that takes a lot of pressure off of you too. It's not that you have to make someone a non-smoker. It's not that you have to make somebody quit their food addiction. It's that you have to help them trigger that moment inside of them where they see the problem not the same way they started. And so my only goal is to just help them to understand the perception they themselves have. Every conclusion they've brought to you has a flaw in it. Why? Because the conscious mind created it. Why did it do that? For safety. Because that's all it knows how to do. You wouldn't be here if you believed that problems are insoluble. If you thought problems are permanent and can't be solved, then you wouldn't be in this course. So you know implicitly that that conclusions people bring have flaws in them. So that's all we're interested in, is like, oh, but you said this, but you also said that. So which is it? That's that
Mhm.
thing of clashing realities. Oh, but you said that you were a health person and that that's the most important thing to you. But then you're also not that worried about how stressed out you are. Okay, well, there's a flaw in that conclusion somewhere. Which is it? What's the flaw? And then it's not up to me to decide what the flaw is. Maybe the client says the flaw is that actually health isn't that important to me and I want to keep my issue. Okay, fine, do that. Or maybe the flaw is I didn't think of how that connects to my health. And now that I realize it, you're right, I don't want to do that anymore. Okay, great. So now how do you want to address that? And there's another whole step we're going to come to later on, like when they get to that place, now how do we actually engage the behavioral change? I haven't said that yet. So there's more. But we're still talking through the interview stage.